I really welcome you all to this session. We have a whole panel of amazing social entrepreneurs who are using this concept of farmer-centered design to serve smallholder farmers around the world. Our moderator is Shalu Umapathy, Managing Director of IDEO's Economic Prosperity Practice, and herself an expert in human-centered design for social good. You can learn more about Shalu at Skoll.org. And with that, I am going to hand it off. Have a great session.
Thanks, Alyssa. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Energized after lunch? We're going to keep you awake. You're going to be so excited. We have the most amazing panel here, so this is the session to remember. So I wanted to kick us off, so IDEO.org is a human-centered design organization. So I wanted to kick off the session talking a little bit about what it means to do human-centered design, what we've done a little bit of, and what we've learned a little bit of at IDEO.org. And then the structure of the session is that then each panelist will give a short presentation from the eyes of the farmer or the person that they're serving to kind of talk about what their service provides, what the change is in their lives. And then we're all going to kind of sit up front and answer a few questions. I would love to make this an interactive session. So I think since it's being recorded, if you do have a question in the middle, let's pause for a minute so that we can move the mic over to you. And yeah, I think let's get started. So IDEO.org is a nonprofit organization. We spun out of the for-profit company IDEO about 7 years ago. And we use the process of human-centered design, and we work on challenges around poverty alleviation, both in the US as well as abroad. And then let's go to the next. Do I have a clicker? Oh, that would be key. Okay. So what is human-centered design? It's a creative approach to problem solving, one that starts with people and ends with solutions that are tailored to their needs. We believe that great design, when we start the design process, we kind of start with the user, what is desirable to them, what's exciting, what aligns with the vision of success for them in life. And then we also layer in what is viable from a business perspective and what is feasible from a technology lens. And at the intersection of those three circles is where true innovation that's transformative can come. And the human-centered design process is one that is not linear. Sometimes the sketch of this is actually like a giant scribble. But we start the process getting inspired and embedding ourselves with the communities that we're serving. We do design research, which is all about playing games and learning. And then once we start to kind of see the patterns of what's possible, we start to converge around what are the opportunity areas. Once we've kind of identified a few different opportunity areas of what the solution might be, we then kind of go big again and brainstorm about what the possible kind of radical expressions of that solution might be. And then finally, once we've prototyped it and tested it and iterated on it, we kind of converge on the idea or the theme or the system that we believe will have greater success and put it out into the world. One of the things that we've learned a lot about is that the difference between what people say and do and what they think and feel. There's a farmer example of when I did an interview with a farmer and I was asking, what's the most important thing to being a farmer? And he said, it's like you have to teach me, and then it's the practice of learning, and then I can be a great farmer. And then I said, well, here's $5, or the equivalent of it. Are you going to go take a class? And he said, no, I'm going to go buy seeds. What are you talking about? So it's how do you get to the deeper level of what's real for them, what's immediate for them, what's important to them right now, and how does that align with the longer-term vision? I talked about how we use unique approaches in doing design research. There's an example of a card sorting game where we talked to a farmer about what are the different ways of them connecting to market. So is it that they use an institution on the ground? Is it the dude with the truck? Is it, what are the different ways? And then having them prioritize which is the most important to them, which is the most accessible to them, which one is their dream, and why is it not possible? And by using kind of games and something tangible to respond to, we find that in our research process, we can get to much deeper level conversations around what is broken in the system around them and what actually is part of getting to a solution. Prototyping is another thing that is my favorite part of the human-centered design process. We take kind of all the nuances of what we heard when we did research and start to get tangible about what the solution might be. So on the left-hand side is an example of how we started to, it's in the adolescent reproductive health space, where we were trying to explain the different contraceptive methods to teens, because there was like so many myths and misconceptions about what the reality was about each of the different methods. So we said, okay, what are some ways of bringing delight and fun, but real clarity around what each of those methods mean? The middle is a prototype with a partner in Nepal that provided maternal health services. And we learned that when it comes to caring for the newborn kids, it's actually the older siblings that take care of them. So how are we actually informing the older kids about the day-to-day health of their younger siblings? And so we just kind of built a learn by yourself tablet set of screens, stuck it on a water tank in the community, and just watched and saw what did people absorb, what did they learn by just interacting with this like kind of delightful thing in their community. And then once, based on what we learned, we could then refine and come up with an actual solution. And then on the left-hand side, or right-hand side, that's an example of a project where we worked on gender-based violence. And we were working with, oh my gosh, I've forgotten the name, in Kenya. But they have an amazing set of programs on the ground. And so one of the things they did was they said that there are many incidents of gender-based violence in their communities, but no one was reporting it because anonymity was really important. Responsiveness from the community workers was also really risky. If they did not respond, then were they not providing services? So one of the prototypes we tested was kind of a drop your note in the box of if you encountered gender-based violence issue in kind of a corner of the community where no one would actually be able to see if you were kind of walking in and out. So these are just ways of when you know a problem, you know some of the examples of the circumstance around them, how do we prototype what the solution might be? And kind of bringing us back to the context of farmers, there's a kind of a few lessons that I wanted to share. And many of you know this, so it won't be shocking, but the income-expense mismatch. So farmers oftentimes put everything that they've got into getting to a great harvest, which means investing in great seeds, in fertilizer. But then there's a pretty long horizon until they actually get the payback, and they actually don't know what the payback is going to be at the end of the harvest season. So when you offer them a product or service in the middle of that timeline, or you suddenly, that farmer has school fees that they have to pay for their kid, they're making the decision between how much do I think I'm gonna make? Is my kid actually gonna be able to go to school? Like, do I have food for my family? It's a really, I think that they do some of the most complex mental math that any population I've ever had to see. So that's been, amazing to learn about. There's also this question of individual versus community that we kind of see an interesting tension between. So if I am going to participate in a program and earn a benefit, it should be something that is offered to my community, because it shouldn't be an individual should not get like identified and only invested in. It should be something, but I at the same time do not want to take the risk of my community on. There's like this kind of, trying to think of an example. So we were doing a market connection program for farmers in Kenya where I was talking to a farmer about, well, what if the price of your product was the same for everyone in your community so that we could kind of simplify the grading kind of process to be able to connect the market? And the farmer was like, no, because that lady that's 2 doors down, her crop is really bad, and she would bring down the price of my crop. And then I said, but then, so should she not be in the program? She said, no, everyone should be part of the program, but then the benefit. So there's this like interesting tension of community benefit, but also kind of individual, especially when it comes to money. When it comes to trying new things, seeing is believing. No matter what like the ag technology is, we do a test plot. We show it to farmers. We like demonstrate that the thing works before we expect them to take the risk on trying something new. Why should they spend their precious resources on something that's unknown? So those were just some of the high-level learnings. So let's switch gears into having folks present one by one. If you guys have burning questions in between each of the presentations, we can take those as well. Is there any kind of upfront questions the folks have? Okay, let's keep moving. So the first one that's up, where's my notebook? Sorry, I should have memorized that. Alloysius, you cool to go? Oh, you're already mic'd. You're good. Cool. So the prompt that I had given Alloysius was
3 minutes.
Yeah, it was like from the perspective. Yeah, not just the time. Come on.
Okay, cool.
Not just the time.
It's the most important thing, right? So.
Because no, come on. Because this is a farmer-centered design panel,
Yeah.
like from the lens of the farmer or the person that is your customer.
Yeah.
How do they see your service? So that was the prompt. You can say whatever you want now.
All right, cool. So, all right. So my name is Alloysius from Farmerline. I'll give a brief introduction to Farmerline and then lessons learned. All right. So we started this business 5 years ago, and when we started, we had one thing in mind: connect farmers to information at all times on their mobile phone. We started with $600 that we got from a competition in Ghana. And we started with 10 years, software engineering experience, and then 30 years of between my co-founder and I, 30 years on the farm and rural experience. So that's all we had. Ability to build software, $600, and also being very close to farmers and having an understanding of how they work and how their communities operate. So in many years down the line, we've been able to build a product. We started with an SMS application. That clearly didn't work because most of the farmers that we work with prefer to, consume content in their native languages. They prefer audio versus SMS in West Africa, so we switched to that. But then, many years down the line, we are working across, 11 African countries right now. A team of over 32 people. We've profiled and served over 200,000 farmers and have mapped over 700,000 hectares of farmland. We have 2 offices in Ghana. But then our model is about getting our technology services to organizations and businesses that work with farmers. I don't want to go too much into what Farmerline does or any sales pitch, but let me just go really deeply into 3 things that we learned over this time. The first time when the first lesson, we built our product for 6 months. We took our first trip to the field. I remember I finished college in 2012. My co-founder just finished his master's. We met a group of 150 agriculture extension officers in Ghana. We showed them our technology, which was mainly SMS. And then our value proposition to them was that you have all this research and all this knowledge in your office. Your budget for going down to the community to do extension work keeps going down 40% every year. So we have a technology that can complement that, and it was just purely SMS. And then they tore us apart. They said that, first of all, they thought that our software was going to take their work away, and then they also said that our idea sucks, it wasn't going to work. And then they gave us one valuable lesson. They said that they spent years building the relationship that they have with the farmers, the trust that they have is extremely important, and farmers value that. They use that to determine how they consume the information that they give them. And secondly, if you send information via SMS, it just wouldn't work. So then we decided to build voice. It took us a year to figure that one out. And the whole idea was take the same experience that farmers get when they speak to officers and put it on a mobile. So they meet, they speak in their local languages, they talk. So what we did was in complements to in-person training, field training, field workshops, we can be able to send very short audio messages to farmers in their native languages, to help them, to remind them to take actions at the right time. Remember, we've also learned that the voice messaging itself will not replace extension entirely because in-person training is still very important. You still have to demonstrate certain types of technologies to farmers. So voice actually helped. And that lesson came from farmers. We also saw that the cost of communication via voice was actually cheaper than SMS, which was really shocking because the idea thing you think is that SMS is 4 cents, right, per message. And then voice is very expensive. But then when you want to communicate, let's say 1 page of content to a farmer, it takes about 15 to 30 seconds, right? And then if you want to send this via SMS, it takes about 15 types, sets of SMS, right? Which is 4 times 15. So it's actually cheaper at the end to communicate via voice than SMS, and that's what we learned from farmers. And now we are distributing resources to farmers using data and technology. And it was inspired by one visit to the field where we met a group of cacao farmers, and then we realized that cacao farmers have been taking credit. They call it cash advance for years, right? So we said there's no financial inclusion. No, it's been happening for years. It's just at the community level. It's not been documented. It's not digitized. There's no transparency, so you don't get to see that. So farmers actually go to this agent. They take money in advance, and then they pay back when their harvest is ready. this agent make a credit decision based on the sales history and also the relationship. So as I'm an agent, you are a farmer, you come to me, you want to get credit, you sold $5 to me last year, this year you sold to me $3, I can anticipate that when I give you a loan of half a buck or $1, you can pay me back because you have $2 more to sell to me. All right, so this informal credit scoring happens in the agent's mind, and basically what we started doing around that is to document this process and put it into an app and then make it available, show the decision-making process and then the repayment process and make it open for other people who want to extend various forms of credit to farmers or to people in the last mile to use. And that is actually powering our AI and data-driven innovation around last mile distribution. And that innovation came from like just seeing what is happening in the community. So when we started that, the whole idea was that give credit because farmers need access to financial services. Credit is a way to go. I'm not saying credit is not great, but this is what we've learned from our work. For every 1,000 people that we try to reach with high quality and affordable inputs, only 256 of them actually got it on credit. So we're curious, we're actually getting it for free and you pay back when you have the money. Why are you getting on credit? Why are you not getting on credit? 300 of them got it through savings, 400 actually bought it instantly. What we saw was that, income and, expense mismatch, right? So if there's a straight match between what farmers are spending and how much they have, and then the services that you're giving to them, they will actually pay for it than to be in debt, right? People have a sense that, a sense of progress. For most farmers that we work with, it's not about being in debt, but it's about having the ability to purchase services directly themselves or save towards it between, 1 month to 3 months. So that was a shock for us. So then the next stage for us as a company is how do we keep using our position as a technology company that has ability to aggregate all these farmers, aggregate their data, and use this information to broker a great deal that actually helps them to get quality product, right in their community, but then at a great price point. Last year it was 20% below market price. We think that as we keep growing, that price will keep going down. And what will happen is that the farmer will move from somebody who is a taker of services to somebody who will have choices. Because if the cost of distribution to them goes down, many more people will play in the market. And when many more people play, the farmer will have a choice. And then when there are choices, prices goes down, quality is ensured because they have information. So this is where we are heading right now. And all these things are really inspired by our work with farmers. That's why we have 2 models. We license our technology to organizations, food companies, across 11 countries. But most of those technologies come from our direct work with farmers in Ghana. So that's basically, an introduction to Farmerline and some of the lessons that we've learned, working with farmers.
One question for you. When you think about the farmer's experience, does the farmer know that you're coming up with this kind of credit scoring for them? Or is it kind of a surprise that comes to them? Surprise, you can get this loan if you didn't have it, or how does it play out?
Yeah, so the idea actually started from so the agent actually finances this cash advance, this demand based on their own cash flow, based on their own pocket money. Yeah. So the agent actually still takes that information into the app, makes a recommendation and takes an audio recording of a farmer, just like a voice signature to say that actually, because we realize that if you sign a paper in the community, nobody cares about the paper. You can take them to court, nothing will happen. But if there's a voice recording where you can play it, it's hey, you took this thing and then you said you're going to pay back at this rate, it helps. So then the farmers don't care about the credit scoring, the machine learning, they don't care about that. All they care about is that I come to you, I want credit, you don't ask me for collateral, you don't ask me to join a group, but for some reason you give me the product, at a fair price, at a fair rate, and then I'm able to pay back to this person I've been working with for years.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie from Proximity Design is going to go next.
3 minutes?
3 to 5. 3 to 5.
Where's the clicker?
Oh, I have it.
Oh. So this is one of our customers, farmer. His name is Umapathy, and we work in Myanmar. He's 80 years old, and that's his son. And he was telling me that for most of his adult life, since he was a young boy, he had hauled water with a rubber bucket on his shoulders every day. That's how they irrigated. The markets had nothing that they could afford, and the government was nowhere to be found, no aid sector. So they're severely neglected a group of people, and this is the backbone of the country. And so until about 8 years ago, we showed up in this village with affordable irrigation products that we had designed. And he took a bet on our foot pumps, and he was able to double his acreage and income. Then he graduated onto using drip irrigation that we had designed. And this is his latest purchase from us, a solar-powered pump. And he was saying that, well, he now owns 8 acres and farms 8 acres. And he was saying that for most of his life, every day he would sweat so much that he could wring out the sweat from his longi, his wraparound. But today, his sole job is to sit under the shade tree and drink tea. And he gets up every half hour and swivels the solar panels. So I'd say after decades of backbreaking drudgery, this is a well-deserved lifestyle. But this is so we basically designed for small plot farmers like Umamon, and all of our staff live and work in Myanmar, embedded, and we see farmers every day, have conversations with them. So we see that they're severely neglected by the markets and the government and aid sectors, and we've come up over the last 14 years with a unique platform of 3 things that we think really boost farmers' productivity and incomes. And one is farm technologies. We design and create products that will make efficient use of their resources, water, labor. And so those are our ag technologies. And then we also provide agronomy services to help farmers close the yield gap and deal with climate change risks, pests, and disease. These are like best fit, curated practices. And then we also provide farm finance that's designed for their cash flow and so that they can make investments in their farm. This is not a generic bundle that we give to farmers. It's customized, more a customized menu that farmers can choose along their stages, various stages of their journey out of poverty. So in a given year, last year we had about 100,000 new farm households use our products and services. I'd say 3 things that are needed to have design be effective for farmers is number 1, empathy is not enough. You need deep knowledge of farming. And farming is very complicated, a lot of variables, and very individualized. So you need people with deep knowledge of farming systems, farm productivity, profitability. So we've seen many designers come and try to design, products for farmers, but on the team there needs to be that kind of expertise from farmers. Secondly, a lot of the new technologies we see that are benefiting large farmers, they just don't scale to small farms, and they don't. So we have to really design intentionally to match the small farm production economics, and that's really tough to do because a 2-acre farmer is going to be able to afford only a fraction of what a large farmer in the West can afford. So this is a huge challenge that requires intentional and focused design effort. And thirdly, farming is a very tactile livelihood or activity, and farmers, I think everyone from Monsanto down want to have a digital relationship with farmers, and they want to do it. Everyone's rushing to do it, But the reality is that farmers, at least the farmers we're dealing with, are very much still using analogs and want in-person, seeing is believing. And so we rolled out a soil testing service this year, and we wanted to be able to deliver their reports, their soil diagnostics by mobile phone. But they still insist on, the farmers are still insisting on seeing a paper copy of their report. So we're having to really use a combination of digital and in-person channels. So that's it for, and 3 minutes. Okay.
Next up, we have Jehiel from Hello Tractor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jehiel from Hello Tractor. And at Hello Tractor, we use farmer-centered design, but we also because we work in a complex ecosystem supporting smallholder farmers with mechanization, we also do tractor owner-centered design and tractor dealer-centered design and tractor OEM or manufacturer-centered design. And we do this work because across the emerging markets, particularly sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, farmers plant late, they undercultivate their land, and they lose income. And they do that because they don't have access to the power that they need. And that could be human, animal, or of course, tractors. And so our job is to make it profitable for those who can afford to invest in a tractor, make it profitable for them to serve smallholder farmers. But because farmers are the pull in our market, that's where we focus a lot of our attention. And that's actually the more difficult part. So, some of the reoccurring themes that you see here on this panel are organizing smallholder farmers into economically efficient clusters or groups. What we do at Hello Tractor is we sell our technology to tractor owners. We also work with tractor manufacturers and dealers operating in the market. They buy our technology, they fit that technology on their tractor, the tractors that they sell. And through our apps, they can see what their tractor is doing at all times. They can locate the tractor. They know what the operator is doing or if they're misusing the tractor. And then the most important piece is we have an app that connects that tractor owner to farmers in need of tractor services. And like Debbie mentioned, the technology as a standalone product really doesn't work. And we tried that. We used to have this SMS booking platform for those that are familiar with Hello Tractor and our work. And it was an absolute failure in the sense that a farmer, first of all, is not gonna transact such a large quantity over SMS. It would be like us transacting our mortgage over a text message. In fact, it would be like our mortgage for the entire year over text message, right? That's a big decision to make. And so what we did was incorporated feedback from our customers and pivoted to a booking agent network system where booking agents had an app and they can coordinate clusters of demand within their community. So you now have an individual that has relationship capital within their community, coordinating that demand, and then pushing it to the tractor owners on our platform, giving the tractor owners the opportunity to earn revenue serving that demand. We've done quite a few other pivots on our platform as well, which we can get into during the Q&A. One of which was we used to sell our own tractor. We thought that was a fantastic idea because in markets like Nigeria where we launched, there are no tractors. You got 6 tractors per 100 square kilometers of arable land. That's about the size of Maryland. And so, which is a huge area. And so we thought, wow, we can sell tractors, empower smallholder farmers with tractor ownership, and then connect those tractor owners to the farmers in their network so they can monetize that asset as a business. But the farmers didn't have access to credit, so we coordinated commercial loans for them. They didn't have the money for the down payment. And then we're like, oh my God, so we just spent 2 years setting up loans for these farmers, and we like to use market-based solutions, so we went to the commercial banks. They didn't have the down payment for the loan. But at the end, they really just needed access to tractor service. They never really asked to be tractor owners. In fact, they didn't want to take on that risk. They were willing to do it, but they didn't want to take on that risk. But there was liquidity in the market to support tractor ownership at the SME level, even at the private equity level, which, we have some private equity funds buying tractors on the platform. But the point was to make sure that the farmers had access to timely and affordable tractor services. So by giving private capital the technology to de-risk the investment, we could then deliver the services that the farmers ultimately wanted. And that service is 40 times more efficient than manual labor, and it's a third of the cost. And we'll continue to incorporate that farmer-centered design, but also tractor owner-centered design, even dealer-centered design to make sure tractors are fixed on time, to make that ecosystem functional. Was that under 2 minutes?
No, but you did great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thomas, you good to go? So next is Thomas from Pula. Sorry.
Hi everyone, how many minutes?
Just go.
Okay, great. I'm Thomas Jeru, co-founder Pula. At Pula, we develop and distribute insurance and farm advisory solutions to smallholder farmers. By end of 2017, we had about 600,000 farmers across 9 countries. I spent the first 18 years of my life in a smallholder farm in the slopes of Mount Kenya. And virtually everyone in the village was a smallholder farmer, my mother, and everyone around. The sad reality about smallholder farmers is that they're always one drought away from destruction, from poverty. They're always one disease outbreak away from total destruction. Why? Because most of them, they just rely, the whole village relies on farming, right? And they don't have any form of insurance. So immediately you can think that all I need to do is go sell insurance to these smallholder farmers. Try selling or talking about insurance to smallholder farmers. Those are the faces. You encounter, first of all, what is insurance? I give you money, then if it doesn't rain, you give me back money, and continue having conversations, trust issues. Why don't I wait and see? Or, I think I've done well so far. And sometimes actually, after you have that conversation, when the calamity strikes, they call you, can I get that product we talked about? Of course, it's too late. The problem is that the smallholder farmers cannot link the value of insurance to the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis. So the solutions they come up with probably will pray, hope for the best, right? So at Pula, what do we do? How do we go around the problem of, one, we package insurance with products that farmers actually want. Products that farmers wake up in the morning and go to buy. Because if you think a farmer will wake up to go buy insurance, forget about it, right? This is seed, your fertilizer, your credit, right? Name them. And we make it as simple as possible, right? So for instance, in case of seed, for every bag of seed that is packaged when leaving the warehouse, it's sort of bundled with an insurance voucher attached to the package of the seed. So when the farmer goes to the shop assistant helps the farmer to register using their mobile phone, right? And at the point of registration, you have the farmer's landmark allocated to a satellite grid, which monitors the amount of rainfall where the farmer is located, where the farm is located. And after 3 weeks, in the case, for instance, for maize, then if there is no rain, then you give the farmer another bag of seed. And all you need to do is just send the farmer an SMS, and they can go and collect another bag of seed, exactly the same place they bought the bag of seed. So you have a whole set of technology supporting that whole process going on. And we do that with fertilizer, similar process, with vet products, as well as credit. Now, one of the things as we go along in the process of designing for the customer, we realize that at the point of registration, we are able to collect very targeted, localized data, farmer data, that allows us to give very targeted advice to farmers. And this is proxies for planting data, size of their farm, their mobile number, their location. So this data allows us to give very synchronized advice to the farmer. Think about it, of giving the farmer information from the point of planting, very relevant information through digital means. If you're planting, this is the best way to plant. If this is a time that you think you're supposed to apply the fertilizer, then this is the best way to go about it, right? Which I think, one, it provides value to farmers every single season. The challenge with insurance is that, for instance, it might pay once in 10 years, right? So the farmer needs to understand what's the value in this insurance. They have to wait for 10 years to appreciate the value of insurance. So the beauty of combining insurance and advice is, one, the farmer builds a trust. He can see the benefit that you're caring. Remember, insurance is a concept of peace of mind, someone who cares, right? And secondly, is that sort of improves the retention, that the farmer now sees the value that the subsequent season they will ask for the insurance. We've had cases where the farmer buys insurance this year, and then the subsequent year, like last year was okay, so why should I buy this year, right? So then you need to have a continuous benefit that the farmer experiences, so that even when in good years they have an incentive to purchase then subsequent years. One of the products that we sell, it's called replanting insurance, and it's very different from traditional insurance in the sense that traditional insurance usually pays at the end of the season, right? So, but this one pays in the sense that if, for instance, within 2 weeks of planting, then you have crop failure or germination failure for that matter, then we pay immediately. We give you another bag of seed within a week, and that allows you to not miss the season. You can immediately replant and not miss a full season. This is Christina, 27-year-old in Malawi. She had total germination failure in the 2017-2018 season. And we were able to reimburse about 29 bags of seed within a week, and she was able to replant. And that's her farm about a couple of weeks after replanting. So she didn't have to miss the full season just because of 1 week of a catastrophe. That's a whole element of working backwards. And this came from the farmers asking, why do you have to wait from this to the end of the season? Why don't you pay us now so that we can replant? We are a for-profit. We target to double the number of farmers from 600,000 to 1.2 million farmers in 2018. Just closed our first seed round to build system as well as build a team and reach 5 million farmers in 2020. So if my last request, if any one of you is interested to come to Africa and sell insurance to these smallholder farmers, please talk to me.
And we have Kola Masha from Babban next.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Excellent. So, my friends, we have a problem in Africa, and that problem is rising insecurity. At the University of Sussex, it's a group of researchers that have been studying trends in global insecurity since 1997. Their data clearly shows that from 2007 to 2016, the number of conflict events in Africa went up 7-fold. Let's think about that. 7-fold in a 10-year period of time. Why is this? Well, we believe fundamentally as oxygen is to fire, so are unemployed youth to insecurity. And we have a tremendous number of unemployed youth in Africa. Young women like Sandra, who on a Saturday morning in March 2014 woke up excited at the prospects of getting a coveted job at the Nigerian Immigration Service. She kissed her daughter goodbye, left her home, never to return. She was trampled to death that day as thousands of people showed up for just a few open positions. Now, if we fast forward, in the next 20 years alone in Nigeria, 80 million youth will be entering the Nigerian workforce. 4 times the number that entered in the last 20 years. We have no time to try to fix this challenge. So to do my part, in 2012, I moved to a small village in northern Nigeria. My friend Jenny actually visited us back then. It was a really tiny little place. And with an idea that could we unlock the power of agriculture as a job creation engine to create jobs for millions of young people. We went village to village trying to convince farmers of this idea, and we failed woefully, barely able to recruit about 100 brave souls. But we persevered. We kept doing what we promised, and slowly we gained their trust. With a passionate and committed team, over a period of 4 years, we grew to become Nigeria's single largest maize-producing entity, supporting 8,000 farmers to produce over 30,000 tons of grain by 2016, enabling them to attain net incomes that are 3 times the national average. How do we do this? Well, we recognize that at the end of the day, a smallholder farmer's biggest challenge is their low economies of scale. Those low economies of scale that trap them in this cycle of poverty where they struggle to access the credit to buy the quality and quantity of inputs to be successful, the knowledge to use those inputs effectively, and despite their tremendous hard work, attaining yields often that are just 20% of other developing countries, at harvest, they're under incredible cash flow pressures, selling most of their products at that time at rock bottom prices. Now, we recognize that farmer cooperatives have played a critical role to enable smallholder farmers around the world solve this challenge. In my family, my grandfather was a smallholder farmer in South Dakota in 1913. From 1913 to 1930, he was able to make enough money to send his children to school. So we looked at how could we stimulate and leverage this power of farmer cooperatives to solve this problem. We created a model we called an agricultural franchise, where we franchise a network of grassroots level farmer cooperatives, small farmer cooperatives, and support them with a full suite of services from training on how to become great leaders of grassroots level farmer cooperatives, training on how to migrate from a subsistence to a commercial mindset, training on how to become better farmers. Second, and most importantly, we provided credit. We worked out a risk mitigation mechanism we call our 8 levels of risk mitigation that have enabled us to deploy tens of millions of dollars to tens of thousands of smallholder farmers and attain a repayment rate of over 99.9%. The third piece is now that credit comes 100% in kind in a holistic set of inputs, beginning with farm analysis, understanding exactly what that farmer needs and being able to tailor a credit package specifically to that farmer's needs. That credit package includes the highest quality seeds, great land preparation services, and other inputs. An individual that visits their farm every 2 to 4 weeks to give them the advice and guidance they need to be successful. All the way down to harvesting, where we provide them the thresher, the empty bag, the needle, and even thread to sew up their bags. And then finally, we offer them the opportunity to store and market their products to get better pricing. We have a network of transportation contractors that are similar to Uber that will pick up their products from their field, take them to one of our 33 collection centers where the product is weighed and graded. Within a week, we can collateralize that product, get them a loan against that product so that they have the cash in their pocket to meet their pressing needs without having to sell that product. We then, as their agent, market that product to them to leading buyers like Nestle to enable them to get prices that are 25 to 50% higher than they would be able to attain themselves. So, the reality, my friends, is that we've been fortunate to be able to today, this year, service close to 30,000 smallholder farmers to produce over 100,000 tons of grain. But in the next 20 years, in Africa alone, there are 400,000 youth coming out into the workforce. Half of them have the opportunity to make a living through agriculture. To support those youth, it would require $150 billion in working capital. Sounds like a big number. But if we can tap into the power of the capital markets and debt, it is a small number. Today, there's $400 billion given out in grant funding every year, but there's $150 trillion given out in debt every year. So all I need is 10 cents out of every $100 of debt. We can do it. Because we have to do it. We cannot live in a world where there are young men and women who are stuck in this cycle of poverty, being attracted into terrible insurgency groups like Boko Haram because they have no other options. I firmly believe we can change this future and we can give them a choice. Thank you.
Okay, so panelists, can you join me up front? I feel like after every presentation, I'm like, sold, let's do it, I'm ready, sign me up. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So I'm trying to be cognizant of time and make sure we have some space for Q&A. So I'm gonna kind of go with a couple of targeted questions up front. I'm curious about, for whoever, I think this is a question to whoever wants to jump in, but the whole idea of building trust in something new, that's a new behavior, a new service, something that's like kind of so integrated into every community. What were the first steps that you all took to be able to build trust in the user you're designing for? You want to go first, Thomas?
Sure. I mean, insurance is about trust. That's all you sell, nothing else. And the concept of index insurance and sort of because of the unit economics of element of reaching smallholder farmers has been there for very long. The question is always that, remember, you have to, over time, iterate. Sort of you build your models, your actual models at the back end. But then those models, most of the times, are maybe 80, 70% accurate. But the challenge with insurance is that if you want to stick to the rules of the contract, then you have, for every 10 farmers, you have 1 or 2 who are not happy. And immediately that breaks completely the trust, right? And talk to most insurance companies. They say it's always about what is in the contract. So what we did from the word go, we agreed that we know that our models are not accurate. So we set up a fund to pay. If we have a way, we set up a way to sort of verify what is on the ground. Sort of, it's called basis risk. So if the index is saying you're not supposed to be paid, but someone calls us and says, actually, I had a germination failure, we verify with 2 or 3 farmers around them, then we pay from that fund. And for us, we look at that as a marketing cost and an element to build that trust. And of course, you continuously improve your model as you go along. Because as long as you're just sticking to the rules, that the index is not supposed to pay. And for sure, that doesn't matter. The farmer doesn't care about satellites and all those things you're talking about. Who is this satellite? Tell them to come here and see that and see that my seed didn't germinate. This guy you're calling satellite, right? So I think you have to be flexible. You have to be very flexible if you want to build trust, especially at the very beginning.
It's like flexibility as well as kind of a guaranteed benefit. Like, we're not going to question you as a user. We're going to just provide a seamless experience from day one. Yeah.
Early on with our foot pumps, we provided a 1-year guarantee. That's unheard of in Myanmar. It was like, what's a guarantee? And, and so people couldn't believe that, if this breaks or something, that they would get a new one. And so that was highly unusual, and we gained trust. And the other thing is with pest and disease outbreaks, we had a hotline number that farmers could call, and they could lose in 3 days their whole crop. And so it's again unheard of to have the kind of service where the next day someone's down there helping them save that crop, and it gets saved, and then the whole village gains trust as well. So very tangible things like that.
So I think for us, trust is at the core of what we do. And I think there are about probably 3 things that we've done to do that. First, when we were going into the communities at the beginning, we had no credibility whatsoever. So we basically leveraged on the credibility of another organization that had been working there for a while, and got them to help us build credibility by association. The second piece was really around building trust the old-fashioned way, ensuring that you do what you say you're going to do, and to the extreme effect. So for us, and as an example, I think it was probably our 2nd or 3rd year in operations, and the factory that we buy fertilizer from, they had a pipeline that was bombed, and they couldn't get gas to make fertilizer. So we had to go out and we figure out how to source fertilizer elsewhere, and at a much higher price, but we still sold the fertilizer at the same price that we promised, because we had already committed, and took a trading loss that year, but and make sure we buy a fertilizer and stock it much earlier now. But those pieces are very, very critical.
Deliver on what you promised to do.
It's very simple.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You also have to do a lot about the agent network that you have, the workforce that you have. And the way you can find and work for that is actually working is also about tapping into the existing communities of trust, right? So it could be, so in our case, it was the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, right? It's run by the government. They've been they've been working with farmers for years, so farmers still know them and trust them. So we recruit our agents through those programs. You could work through the churches as well. The church is very powerful. In Ghana, in the communities, if you find people who, if somebody's in the church, or maybe a pastor, a young pastor, there could be someone that people trust, or somebody in the mosque. So that's one part, finding like great people that people trust. The second one is making sure people that you've selected are actually available and constantly working to respond to questions. And that is tied to the compensation model that you have, right? So the first stage, you find people and then they work for you for some time, but then would they be available when a farmer has a question? Would they be motivated enough to treat the farmer with respect? And that is connected to how much money they make from the business model that you have. So tapping into the network of trust and also building a compensation structure that actually motivates your agents to actually respond to the needs of farmers.
That's awesome. Did you want to jump in? Or?
I mean, my response would be very similar to everyone else's.
Yeah.
We tried the technology-only solution because our advisors from Silicon Valley thought that was the best way for us to scale. And to our dismay and theirs, those who put money into our company, we had to switch to a model that leveraged those communal relationships and leveraged that equity that already existed. And then the consistency of service delivery. Even when you lose money, a tractor breaks down, you send out another one. You know you're going to lose money on that particular transaction, but over time, you build that trust. So you start with the foundation of trust that already exists, and then you grow from there.
That's awesome. I think kind of following on the the story of shifting from the Silicon Valley advice. Part of kind of the design process is being able to be flexible and shift directions based on the feedback that you're getting on the ground. And I know that, Alloysius, you talked about shifting from SMS to voice, and then I think shifting your model from like a tractor to a platform. How have you been able to? So I'm kind of trying to get at like have you been enabled by the infrastructure? So I'm thinking about from your investors, from your leadership, from your setup on the ground to be able to pivot, to be able to grow. And I think the follow-on to that is what would you ask of the folks in this room to enable you to be able to do that better in the future? I'm trying to make 5 questions in 2 so that we can have Q&A. But so the question is around I believe that there's kind of a greater expectation of startups to be able to have the right solution from day one, but being able to iterate and pivot is so important. Mm-hmm. And I think all of you have done that in various ways. So have you been set up to do that? And should you be able to do it? Should the system set you up to do it better or in a different way?
Yeah, I think the first thing is proximity for us is really important, to be able to always be asking questions and be curious of how our customers are doing. And we're held accountable when we're very close to them and we're selling things to them. It's the ultimate accountability. If we put crap out there and they don't buy it, we know right away. So we get that feedback. So that helps us pivot. And I think in terms of, it also keeps us very flexible and in a changing landscape, because things are changing quite quickly in Myanmar. So the proximity piece is super important for us in getting information on time from the customers. In terms of what our investors and donors help us with is giving us unrestricted money, grants, that allow us to pivot quickly and make mistakes and correct, and without having to worry about budget line items and things like that. And just being able to treat people as customers in selling products is very different from giving them away, because you get that immediate feedback.
That's awesome. Yeah. Aloysius? Oh, sorry, Thomas. Sorry.
Thomas, okay.
Yeah.
From an iteration point of view, there's one complication when it comes to farming. The fact that, for instance, in our case, everything happens once or twice a year, right? So you have a window where you sell, if it's seed, fertilizer, 2 months or 3 months in a year. You miss that, or you just have one opportunity of iteration, right? The traditional, think about the typical concept of iterate, learn, perfect, and then scale. So, but if you try that, you'll struggle, especially because you just always have that 2-3 window of opportunity to learn, and you'll apply it in a year's time. Makes it very slow. So we've had to adopt a different model where you are in 3 or 4 countries, where you do something here, you learn, you transfer it to the next. So in 1 year, at least you have 4 or 5 iterations going round, which, thinking about from some investors, your vanilla type investors, that sounds ridiculous. What are you doing 4 things which you're still iterating? Why don't you perfect one and then scale? But it just helps your iteration as fast as possible, meaning it's expensive in a way, but I think it makes the learning faster, because I think about the product we had 1 or 2 years ago, it's probably changed 10 times, which does help.
That's a really cool example of kind of prototyping at scale in multiple places. It's really cool. Jehiel, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my response is, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, you have to know who your market is, right? So if your market is the end customer, the farmer, then pivoting when there are certain challenges that you face. For Hello Tractor, when we pivoted away from selling tractors, we did it in an environment where Nigeria slipped into a recession. There was credit market contraction. We couldn't finance the machines. The farmers didn't have the capital. The Naira depreciated against the dollar. Effective price of the tractor doubled in a very short period of time. Kola, you know about this. And but we had to discipline ourselves to our customers' needs so we could continue to grow. But if your customer is a donor, then you have to discipline yourself to their needs, and they have certain impact metrics. So I don't even think it's a binary kind of good or bad thing. I mean, if you ground yourself in who your customer is, then you have to deliver for them. And for Hello Tractor, we've always prioritized our customers, farmers and tractor owners. And so when we pivoted away from trying to sell tractors to selling technology, which is a lot easier to sell in these environments, we captured 75% of all the new tractors that were sold in Nigeria. So that was a success for us. But USAID wasn't happy because they wanted us to sell our little mini tractors. I hope nobody from USAID is in the building. We love USAID.
Let them hear it.
USA is our, America first. No, I'm joking. USAID has changed a lot over the last 12 months, hasn't it? But yeah, so it's just about market discipline. This is on camera. Wow.
I know. Button up that suit, my friend. Awesome. Thank you for that honest answer. Let's take some questions from the audience. When do you want to? I think we have mics coming over. So front row, and then we'll go up to the lady in the back. Or sorry, I was going to have Wendy that's up here in the front.
I wanted to take the conversation in a bit of a different direction. And top of mind for me are women smallholders. And we know that increasing productivity, especially for women smallholders, has huge benefits at the household level. And it gets to these holistic benefits that have been talked about to some degree. How have you been taking women smallholders into consideration with the different types of interventions? Have you had to differentiate? That may or may not be a loaded question. Has your approach changed over time, and what are you thinking about in particular with regards to reaching women smallholders?
Kola.
So women smallholders actually have a lot of similar challenges actually to young smallholders, in the sense that typically they have much smaller plots of land. So their need for productivity enhancement is much higher because they only have, if you have a 0.2 hectare piece of land, you need to really optimize that. The other piece that they have is they've tended to not have investment capital, so they've been mining their soil more. So those small plots of land tend to have lower soil quality, soil health. So their need for a comprehensive soil health solution tends to be greater. We've actually designed our model specifically for that demographic that has that particular challenge. We can finance a farmer as low as 0.1 of a hectare and ensure that they are able to get yields that are typically about 2 to 3 times national average. The challenge we face, though, which is a very vexing issue, is as you move into communities that are more conservative, it's harder and harder to reach women. And we've been really trying to solve that challenge. And through a series of iterations of surveys and talking with different folks, we found out that really the root cause is the fact that their husbands often are not comfortable letting them out and work with organizations like us. So we designed a product that is specifically designed to make the husbands comfortable. And now what we do is we finance their wives, their daughters, their mothers to have retail shops at the home, and then meet with them on a monthly basis to provide training and so on and so forth. And the idea, it's still not proven yet. Our hope is that will now become a pipeline for us to get close to 10,000 women into our program within the next 12 months or so.
Awesome. I think there was a hand. Okay, how about this woman right here?
Thank you. My name is Micah Reinch, and I'm here with the Grameen Foundation. And I have a question particularly regarding the use of the data that is being collected through digital ag initiatives. And Grameen Foundation is, as many of you maybe know, has been an early mover in the area of digital ag, and so we've developed a number of products and services that link digital agriculture with extension workers in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. And we're finding that we have this growing database of really granular data. And in the age of big data, we're starting to look at what we're doing with that and try to view it as an asset that we have, and collectively in the industry we have. And so Grameen just had a webinar on Monday in collaboration with USAID's Global Development Lab. And we're really trying to launch a conversation about what we can do with this data so that it can better serve smallholder farmers and our industry. So I'm curious if any of you are thinking about that and what you're doing with the data that you're collecting.
Can I answer that one?
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Data privacy, I mean, you saw what happened yesterday. Zuckerberg was on the Hill. And so data privacy is something that, at least in the US, our default setting is we have to self-govern because the regulatory environment has not evolved with the generation and exploitation of data, right? So we were fortunate to work with Sidley Austin on revising our data privacy policies to be not in alignment with just the United States, but also what's coming down the pipeline in the European Union, which is much more conservative in terms of how you can use data. And until we're comfortable with how we can use this information, particularly these connected tractors are mapping farmers' fields, right? They're mapping transportation routes, planting times. There's a lot of implications to this information. And so how we self-govern is we don't share that or do anything with that data externally until we are comfortable with what the deeper implications might be, right? And it's a very complicated topic that I don't think anybody has wrapped their minds around. So erring on the side of caution will probably benefit not only the smallholder farmers, but the companies that serve them, because you can find yourself in a lot of trouble if you move too quickly.
Yeah, please, Thomas.
Yeah, from our side, we collect data in two ways. We collect data, we give tools to companies, food companies that are working with farmers to collect data and store it. When we do that, that data is not for us, it's entirely for them, it's their proprietary information, so we can't do anything about it. We can look at it, but we can't touch it. And then we collect data from the farmers that we work with, like, directly in Ghana as well. So we use that information, to help us to track the demand of resources that they require, how much they can pay, and all that. And often we get a lot of people coming to us, especially large input manufacturers that are trying to have direct access to farmers, and then they all come asking us the wrong questions. They're like, can you give me database of the 100,000 farmers that you have with their phone numbers so that we can call all of them and try and sell inputs to them? And we said no. First of all, we can't give that to you because by the laws in Ghana, we have the Ghana Data Protection Act that doesn't allow us to do that. And two, giving you that information will be useless because you can't, what they want to do is build the right package of input that farmers require, price it well, and give it to them. If I give you the phone numbers and then you send out phone calls to them or you send SMS, you're not going to get a return that you want. So let us provide you insight and advise you on how you can distribute your product. First of all, how you can build your product and tailor it to the needs of the farmers in our community, and how you can distribute it at a price point that farmers can afford. So we encourage them to ask for the insight, actionable insight, business insight, that will help them, to distribute more to farmers versus asking for the raw data, because everybody's asking for raw data. In most cases, they might not need the raw data itself. They might need the insights that they can get to help their business.
Yeah, so just to talk a little bit about something different about data. So we think in some of these markets, the biggest issue is that you have fragmented pieces of data where everyone is trying to collect the data. No one has the efficiencies, and no one has a view, sort of a full view of the data. So to give you two examples. One, so you have the input companies don't have a view of their customer completely, right? And at the same time, so you'll have, they have their own initiatives, for instance, seed companies to collect the data, fertilizer companies, chemical companies, which don't yield much fruit, right? So how we approach it is that for much of the activities, especially what we do with input companies when we bundle the product. So our agreement is that sort of that data is sort of owned centrally, and then anyone can benefit from it. So you basically, what we view at Pula from a data point of view is that sort of build an ecosystem where you have all these players can plug in and build a data where everyone can benefit from it. Sort of as long as it's not about you, and at the end of the day, as long as they use this to benefit the smallholder farmer, then you build the scale in terms of to be able to collect that data. Because think about it, we are collecting this data for insurance. But again, you can use the same data for farm advisory. Then you have companies that are spending enormous amounts of money to do digital farm advisory. Their cost of acquisition of that data is significantly high. So then how do you go about building the scale efficiencies around it? Secondly, for another one of our products, area yield insurance, we collect a lot of yield data. Probably you have a repository of a lot of yield data in Nigeria, 9 countries across Africa. Now, the question is, of course, the cost of acquiring that data, sort of the yield data, is high. But then the question is, who else would be interested in that data? Then you reduce the cost to each of the users. I think if we start looking at it from a point of reducing the cost of data acquisition, and secondly, as long as it's properly sort of policed to the benefit of the owners of the data, who are the farmers, right? Because it's farmer data at the end of the day. Yeah.
Cool. I think we are at time, unfortunately. But this has been an amazing panel. Thank you, all of you, all the panelists for coming. Thank you all for coming.